This message is brought to you by Journey Life Church. Visit us today at journeylife.church or find us on Facebook.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm got a lot of energy this morning, so I'm sorry if I seem a little more energetic than I even normally am. I can't sit still, and it's great. So not too long ago, my dad came to visit, and we see him maybe 2, sometimes 3 times a year, so not very often. But he came out to visit, and got to see Ren for the first time since he was real little. I think last time he was out was Ren's first birthday, and before that was when he was born, so he hasn't got to see him very often. So it was a real treat for him to come out, and my dad and my stepmom are real campers. They like to go to campgrounds. They're planning on retiring over the next couple of years, and they're going to be full-time campers. They're going to, it's an exciting thing. They're actually working on, they've got a camper right now that's probably nicer than our house, but they're going to upgrade before they retire. So they're going to get an even better one, and it's going to be one that has a toy hauler on it, which means that they can park their golf cart in there, because what's camping without a golf cart, right? So anyways, we got to visit with them. They were at a campground over in Cuyahoga Falls, and while we were there, my stepmom was like, "Oh, we need to go do things. We need to go see some of these parks. We need to go out and just see what there is to see." And Nina and I are like, I guess we'll go walk a little bit. not too terribly excited about it because we're out of shape. Who here is out of shape? You don't need to answer. Drew, you're not out of shape. You're one of the few that if you raise your hand is lying. And nothing against you guys. I'm out of shape too. I get out of breath going up and downstairs. So anyways, we go to these parks and we hear an announcer, and it announces a name, and it's like, "This is a 100-mile runner." I'm like, "A what?" Am I hearing right? I thought I was hearing things wrong. I was like, okay, there's no way that somebody's running 100 miles on purpose. So we keep walking, and sure enough, we start talking to people. There's runners. They're finishing up, and we're like, did we hear that correctly? Are you guys running 100 miles? And they're like, "Oh, no, we aren't running 100 miles. I'm like, "Oh, how far did you run?" "Oh, we only ran the 50 miles. Oh, only the 50. And so my stepmom starts up a conversation with the gentleman that we were talking to, and she's like, "When did you start running?" "Oh, 5 a.m. this morning." And it was 2:30 at this point in time. And so this is when the 50-mile runners are done. And I was like, "Oh, well, that sounds like a terrible idea." And so the 50-mile runners stop, and the 100-mile runners keep going past that finish line, and they get announced as they go by, going on to the next 50 miles. And we're sitting at a campground with my dad and stepmom late at night when we're thinking about going home, going to sleep, and we see fireworks going off. First one started going off at 8:30 at night, which is when the first runners pass finish line for 100 miles. Started at 5 a.m., went to 8:30 p.m. Those are the fast runners. I say no. I used to be in great shape. I wasn't always this squishy. So I actually at one point in time used to be as skinny as Drew and as in shape as Drew. I had abs in the whole nine, and now they just got a little bit of padding hiding them. But the biggest problem is the fact that exercise isn't as good as food. Exercise doesn't trump Taco Bell, in my opinion. Hence me having to lose a lot of weight. I still have another 40 pounds to go, and changing my diet only had me lose a little bit. So I was like, I guess I have to start exercising. So every day this last week, except for yesterday, I did some sort of exercise. And I woke up, and muscles I didn't know I had were hurting. You know, there's a muscle right here on both sides that if you do any sort of anything, it hurts real bad. Not me. I do now. And then thighs hurting, and a toddler climbing on you while they're trying to do push-ups, and it was just a whole ordeal. So I'm sitting here, I'm struggling to do these things to get into shape, because, like I said, I get out of breath going up and down stairs. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, exercise is hard. It can be hard. It starts off as hard, and you don't want to do it, and you feel silly doing it because you don't know the exercises. I have these exercises, I look at them like, what is that? Like a standing pigeon? What is that? That's one of them. So I'm doing all these things, and I'm like, what are these exercises? And I started thinking about it. I'm like, this reminds me a lot of prayer. To those of you who were raised praying, prayer is not really that big of a deal. It's easy. It comes easy to you. Those of you who were raised exercising, exercise is not a big deal. It's easy to you. It takes a lot for you to be able to push yourself. I can't run as much as Drew. I can't run across this room without being out of breath. I ran down that hallway coming in here because I had too much energy, and by the time I got up here, I was sweating. So, case in point, I am out of shape. So, the thing about prayer, though, is the more you do it, the easier it gets. And that's our only real, verbal connection to God besides doing worship. Our conversation with God, that's all prayer is, by the way. It's a conversation with God. It's a conversation with the creator of everything around us. We wouldn't have any of this. We wouldn't be here had it not been for God. So the fact that we have an opportunity to speak to God, that should be exciting to us, but instead we're like, I feel silly, hey God. Or we feel there's a certain way that we need to do it, or we look at people that have been in the church for their whole lives, and they pray for hours on end. They lock themselves in a room, and they have scripture on the wall, like Al over here. He's great at that. And I look at that, and I'm like, hey, Jesus. Right now I have an excuse for our dinner time prayer to be super short because we have a toddler, and his attention span is only long enough for it to say, thank you, Jesus, for those food and blessed that enters our bodies, amen, to which he promptly responds with, men. But my prayer was that even beforehand, because I'm not great at prayer. It takes exercising that muscle. And then it's not as easy as being like, okay, exercise aerobics, ready? Warmed up my prayer hands. That's not how easy it is. It's not that easy. You have to think about it. You have to make time for it. And who here knows that we're short on time? We don't have a lot of free time at work. We got kids. We got our spouse or significant other. If not that, then you've got other things filling up that time. So it's hard to make that time, and you find out later on that you probably need to think about limiting some of your sleep time in order to make time for that. I used to wake up about an hour or so later than I do now, and I was like, all right, well, I don't have time to read my Bible or pray. Sorry, God, I'll find a way to make it work. And I had to by waking up earlier and earlier. But you have to make time for it, because you can't grow unless you're making time for it. But it ends up being one of the most rewarding things. We'll come back to that in a little bit. I've got a couple stories, because this is a Sunday school series, so I've got a couple stories from the book of Daniel. The first one, I'm sure most of you have heard it before. It's about Daniel and the lion's den. So Daniel, he was an administrator to King Darius. In fact, he was the best administrator. King Darius liked him more than he liked anybody else and thought that he did the best job. And he told everybody that, so everybody tended to have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder against Daniel. So they decided, after finding out from King Darius that Daniel was going to be put as second in command, that they needed to do something about that, as people would need to do, and rather than just letting them go on and do their stuff, they're like, no, we need to put an end to this right now. So they're like, we need to find a way to just eliminate the Daniel problem. So they observed him for a while. They're like, one little problem here. Daniel's too good of a person. That one friend or family member that you have that is good at everything and you hate them for it? That's exactly what this was. Daniel was good at everything he did, was nice about everything, and he was faithful. He was faithful to God, and that's what they decided would be the one thing they would turn against him. So the officers go to the king, all of them except for Daniel, and they're like, oh, King Darius, you are the greatest thing since sliced bread. I love you so much. Your hair looks nice today. Look at your beard. They compliment him. They get him all feeling great and they're willing to agree to anything. They're like, by the way, we just so happen to have this decree that we want you to sign. No big deal. Just read it through and go ahead and sign it. And the decree says, for the next 30 days, no one is allowed to pray or worship anybody, God or man, besides King Darius. So at this point in time, King Darius is like, well, they puffed up my ego enough to where I'm okay with this. Like, everybody can do this all day long. I love this. And in this point in time, if a decree was signed by the king, no one, not even the king, could reverse that decree. So as he's signing this, he's like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. But then word gets back to Daniel, and Daniel's like, oh, well. He goes home. He kneels down, and he starts praying immediately for help from God. Immediately after being told that, oh yeah, by the way, the punishment for this, we're going to throw you into a den of lions if you get caught praying to anyone or anything else. So he goes home. He's like, hey, God, help me out here. So the other officers, they know that Daniel's going to go back and pray. Why? Because Daniel was very disciplined. He would always pray at the same time every day. So they go back, and they burst into his place. They find him, and they bring him back to the king. So while they're talking to the king, they're like, listen, you remember this decree that you signed? And the king's like, it's been 10 minutes. Of course I remember. They're like, well, Daniel here, he's praying 3 times a day. And the king was like, oh, well, his hands were tied. Remember, Daniel and King Darius, they're like BFFs. They're best friends. They're like this. And so he's like, I need to find a way to get Daniel out of this. But again, he can't reverse his decree. So he orders him be thrown into the den of lions. And right before throwing him in there, he tells Daniel that he wishes him luck, and he prays that the God that he serves so well can rescue him. And then he throws him in there. So the king goes home, and he fasts. He can't eat. He can't sleep. Early the next morning, he rushes there. And in Daniel 6:20, he says, when he got there, he called out in anguish, Daniel, servant of the living God, was your God whom you serve so faithfully able to rescue you from the lions? And I just picture him like yelling through a big stone wall, and here's Daniel, yeah, I'm okay in here. I don't know why I gave him Kermit's voice. So he yells, yeah, I'm okay. You know, he even sent down an angel to shut the lion's mouth so it would cause me no harm. So at this point in time, he has Daniel lifted out of the lion's den, and out of his anger for being tricked, he takes all the officers who created the decree. He throws them, their wives, and their children into the lion's den, where they were immediately eaten and torn apart. Because Bible stories. So Daniel was told he couldn't pray for 30 days. But even though he was told he couldn't, he continued to pray 3 times a day. And when I think about it, I'm like, if I were told that I couldn't pray for 30 days, how badly would it affect me? And I'm not going to make you guys think, oh yeah, I pray all the time. I'm bad about it. Yes, I've been waking up earlier to read my Bible and stuff, and it's stepping stones, but prayer, like I said, I'm not a great prayer. So I'm like, would it really affect me that much? Are my prayer muscles in shape at all? Or are they just kind of hanging there all flabby? And, you know, I like I said, my body lately, it's been killing it and everything like that. I'm out of shape. And you can get discouraged because you look at all these people that, like, if you're a runner, like if Drew were to try to run 100 miles right now, I don't think he'd make it. Drew, I love you, you're in shape, but I don't think you're going to make it 100 miles. And you can't set your eyes on somebody who has been doing this their whole lives and working towards it and working towards it. You have to make steps. You have to work towards it. So the same goes for prayer. You have to work towards a goal. If you want to pray more, if you want to get that relationship with God better, then you need to work at it. So a note that I have on here, you can't be a 100-mile prayer warrior if you get out of breath going up and down the stairs. Again, I got out of breath going up and down the stairs. So prayer, like I said, is more of a conversation with God. It's it's something like you have to work at every relationship. And kind of as a little example for that, how many of you have a friend who, whenever their life is just terrible, things are going wrong, they call you up on the phone, oh, you won't believe what happened. That's the only time you hear from them. You see their name on your phone, you're like, hello? Better question for those of you who might not have a friend, how many of you are that friend? I think everybody has that one person that they call and they vent to, and sometimes we get to the point where we don't realize that that's all we're doing is venting to them. I actually, at one point in time, had somebody call me out on it. They're like, Tim, you only talk to me when you've got a problem. I'm like, no. They're like, when's the last time we hung out? I'm like, three weeks ago. They're like, and you didn't complain about anything? I'm like, oh. So we all kind of can fall into that. And a lot of the times we tend to not want to pray because we're like, oh, nothing's going wrong. We don't need to pray about anything. So God's sitting there and he's listened to half of us just complain about all the bad stuff when it tells us that we should thank him for the things that he's doing for us in our daily lives, in our prayer. It's the way that you should start a prayer. Hey, thanks for everything. This is what I need, or this is what I don't need. And if it goes according to your will, cool. Thanks. Paraphrasing, of course. That's not how the Bible words it. So you have to be able to speak to God not only in the bad times, but the good times as well. You have to be able to say, God, today was phenomenal. I got the parking spot I wanted. Everything at work went great. I actually got a raise today. Wouldn't that be nice? But it's a struggle because we're like, oh, well, we got to pray for things that we need, and we get in the habit of thinking that that's all that we have. So if we work towards that, we start praying to God more and more and more and more and more and get that relationship going where you and God are besties. You talk on a daily basis and you can't get enough of praying. Then you get to a point where you're tested. So what do you do if you're tested? Well, there's a story in the Bible of three guys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abendnego. They were officials for King Nebuchadnezzar. It's a fun name to try to spell. There's a D in there and two Z's and fun stuff like that. But this king, he was full of himself. He's like, I'm going to make this giant gold statue, 90 feet tall, 9 feet wide. It's a beauty. All of you get to come here for its dedication, and when this band starts playing, you're going to all bow down and worship it. And if you don't, I'm going to throw you into this fiery furnace. Some people say it's a fiery furnace. Some translations actually say it's a blazing furnace. And so I think that's a bit harsh. Like, look at how great this is. If you don't think it's great, then I'm going to burn you alive. Like, that's kind of a rough thing a rough ultimatum to have. But the band starts playing, and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they refuse to bow down. So they were immediately brought to the king, and he gives them the opportunity to lie their pants off, and he's like, I hear you weren't bowing down and worshiping. Is that true? And they're like, absolutely it's true. We did not bow down. So they were given the chance to lie about it, to which I would probably look at that furnace like, nope, I worshiped so well, it was great. But they're like, no, we didn't. So the king's like, just because I'm having a great day? Nebi looks at them, he's like, I will give you another shot. Go ahead and worship when this band starts playing, and no God with a little g would be able to save you. So the three men look at the king and they say, nah, bro, our king will save us. Or our God, sorry. Big G. So now the king is furious, and he instructs the strongest of his soldiers to grab the men, bind them up, and to heat the furnace to 7 times hotter than it already was. And remember, it was already hot enough to be considered a blazing furnace. So they gather up the men, they tie them up, they bind them up, They open up the furnace and they throw them in, and the furnace is so hot that immediately the flames engulf the soldiers, and they die right where they stand as the men are thrown in. But the crazy thing about the story is yet to happen. This is just the beginning. So, at this point in time, the Nebster's sitting there like, yeah, I showed them, I taught them a lesson. And he's like, wait a minute. Hey, didn't we threw 3 guys in there, right? And his advisor was like, yeah. He's like, why do I see 4 in there? And come to think of it, the 4th one kind of looks like a god. So, at this point in time, he's looking and he's noticing that their hands aren't bound anymore. They're walking around freely in a blazing furnace that was heated 7 times hotter, and they're just walking around and they're like, it's no big deal. So he gets as close as he can, which I'm guessing couldn't be any closer than me and Pastor Chris here because this thing is blazing. And he yells to them, he's like, Rack, Shack, Benny. Yes, that's a VeggieTales reference. Threw it in there for the Nats because I know they love their VeggieTales. He goes, servants of the Most High God, come out here. So the men come out, and not a hair on their head or beards are even singed. They were basically royalty, so they were wearing a lot of clothing, a lot of really nice clothing that's thick, and none of it even has a smell of smoke on it. None of it's singed. And I don't know about you guys, but if I even think about going near a campfire, I reek of smoke for like 7 days. So they were inside the fire, and they didn't have the smell of smoke on them. So, in Daniel 3:28 and 29, King Nebuchadnezzar, I know I'm running out of fun ways to say his name, so I'm done with that. He says, praise to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abendnego. He sent his angel to rescue his servants who trusted him. They defied the king's command and were willing to die rather than serve or worship any god except their own God. Therefore, I make this decree. Remember, again, decrees cannot be reversed after the king signs them. If any people, whatever their race or nation or language, speak a word against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they will be torn limb from limb, and their houses will be turned into heaps of rubble. There is no other God who can rescue like this. So how crazy is that? The king that wanted them dead because they refused to bow down to his newest toy that he built, he completely changed his mind. He did a complete 180 in his mindset. And it was all because of the persistence and faith of these 3 men. You know, they had multiple chances to change their tune. Like I said, they could have lied their pants off immediately. Like, no, they didn't see it right. We had to get up because our knees were hurting. We can't be on our knees that long worshiping, but we worshiped, I promise. They could have changed their tune. They could have bowed down anyways, right then. But they didn't. They decided not to just save themselves. Instead, they gave God a chance to take their crazy moment in their life where it's impending doom for anyone and turn it into a beautiful, beautiful miracle. You know, this story helps to visualize the importance of being consistent in our faith, especially in a world where it's so easy just to stop believing in God because I don't like what Pastor had to say that morning, so-and-so didn't say good morning to me that morning. You sat in my seat last week, and you know it's my seat because every now and then when I roll out of bed and come on Sundays, I sit there, and you were in my seat last week. And, you know, I'm over-exaggerating, of course. But I'm not too far off the point because I know this from experience. I left the church for almost a decade, all because a youth pastor corrected me on something I was doing in my life, and I didn't want to hear it, so I left. I said, you know what, forget God, forget the church. All because I didn't like what somebody said. And it's so easy to do that. It's so easy to just stay in bed on Sundays. It's so easy to not wake up early and read our Bible or stay up late and read our Bible or make time to pray and talk to God. It's so much easier to just not. But even in a world where we can just unfriend and unfollow people that we don't like, in a world where as soon as things start to get difficult, or we have a different view than people, so we just run from that situation, we have to think, are we treating God the same way that we're treating the people around us? Do we get angry at him because we don't seem to be getting what we want? Things don't seem to be going well in the moment? If you think about it, don't you think things seemed pretty bad for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abendnego? The flames swirling around them. Hotter than anything we've experienced, I guarantee you that. They're standing in the middle of the flames. Things had to seem pretty bad for them. Or don't you think things seemed pretty bad for Daniel, who was thrown into a den of hungry lions? This den was purely made to get rid of people. These lions were probably only fed people. So things had to look pretty bad for them. Don't you think things look kind of bad for you with the addiction that you're facing? Your unhappy marriage, deaths in your family, failing health, your bad living arrangements, your financial struggles. You know, the list could go on and on and on, but I'm not going to sit here and list off every situation you could be in because we'd be here all day. And some of us have lunch reservations. So, if God can help these men out of their situations, what do you think he can do if you just build that relationship with him? If you press into him rather than push away from him, what do you think he can do in your life then? So, in Matthew 21:22, it says, "And whatever you ask for in prayer, you will receive, if you have faith." So that means we're going to get whatever we pray for, right? And everything that we want, as long as we believe in it, we're going to get it. But that's not quite right. What happens when prayers aren't answered? In James 4:3, it says, "You ask and you do not receive, because you ask wrongly to spend it on your own passions." Which is saying that we're praying for stuff that we want. We aren't saying, "Hey, God, can we do this?" We're like, "God, I need this." We're in a world of instant gratification, and so we look at prayer like a vending machine. It's not a vending machine. You can't put your dollar in and get a Coke back. God might decide you need water today. So it all gets summed up in 1 John 5:14. It says, "And this is the confidence that we have towards him, that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us." So we're going to stop. We're going to look at the part where it says anything according to his will. And this is the key here. This is the key to prayer and how prayer works. If you ask him for anything according to his will, that means what he has planned for your life, what's in his plan. He hears it. And with the other pieces of scripture, he gives you anything that you ask for in faith. And if you're asking for it in faith, you are asking for something according to his will. But just make sure you know, his plan doesn't always make sense to us. Because a lot of times, we ask the questions, the hard questions that no pastor has an answer for. Why did they have to die so young? Why do I have these health issues? Why am I struggling so much? Sometimes God takes those moments those fiery furnaces, those lions' dens. He takes those moments that just don't make sense, and they make you cringe on a daily basis. You struggle, and you're breaking down, and you're just screaming out to God, why? He takes those moments, and he turns them into something beautiful. Moments that can make your life a beacon for other people. Moments that can take your life and make it a beacon to you. There's been moments in my life where I'm just like, why did I go through that? Why was I an addict? Why wasn't I an alcoholic? Why did I go through all these moments in my life? Why did I struggle so badly? Why did I denounce God? Why did I run? But now I look back. Without those moments in my life where I struggled and I almost became homeless, and I thought I wasn't going to survive. I thought I was going to die on the streets. Then God scooped me up, and he gave me these moments where I can reach out to people. I can talk to people about things that other people can't talk about because they haven't dealt with it. Because out of our struggles and out of these moments, our fiery furnaces that make it look like we can't make it through, we have to press into God. We have to lean on God. We have to go to what God is wanting us to do. Focus on him, not at the flames around us, because he is going to make something beautiful out of our struggle. So I'm going to challenge you today. Start making time for this relationship with God. Start making time where you sit down and pray. Get into his word a little bit. If you get the Bible app on your phone, if you don't know where to start, because I'm bad about that too. I don't know where to start on it. Like I said, I left the church for about a decade. I'm terrible at knowing where to start on the Bible. It's a scary, hard book to read. Get the Bible app right on your phone. And you can start reading plans. And they have devotionals that go with it. These pastors that are far smarter than I and know so much more than I could ever hope to know about the Bible. They have these things written up that they have just to help you. Like, you can even search by types of situations you're dealing with. You're dealing with addiction, depression. If you're dealing with marital problems, anything, they've got devotionals to help you work through that. And it gets you into the Word. And once you're done, just have a little conversation with God. Again, that's all prayer is. Prayer is you sit down with God and you say, God, today was a day. Today was a day. And God's like, I know. Tell me all about it. He wants to hear it. If you can call up your friend, if you can call up your mom, if you can call up any family member or any person in your life and tell them about how terrible your day was or how great your day was. Have you ever had the news that you get where you're just so excited you have to call everybody that you know? Why isn't God on that calling list? Why can't we be like, oh, God, I can't believe it. This is what happened to me today. God wants to hear that just as much as he wants to hear, God, I can't believe what just happened to me today. He doesn't care about the tone or what the news is. He just wants to hear from you. He knows all that's going on in your life, but he wants to hear about it. Just like a parent. We have a 18-month going on 19-month. Most of you have seen him running around, running into people and pushing people over. Probably heard him go, ball, 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 ball. He can't say many things, but he sure as heck tries. And he'll come up to us and you're like, yeah, and you don't look at him and say, go away, I don't care. Some days you want to, but you care what he has to say, even if it doesn't make sense or you know what happened today. As I get older, I'm sure you can attest for it. They tell you about stuff. You know, you were there. And then you took me to this place, and then we went and did this, and then we did this, and I saw a leaf. And you know about all these things. But you care. You listen because you care. And God is looking at us. He wants to hear about that leaf we saw. As silly as it sounds, he wants to hear about that. So as you do your conversations with God, watch your relationship get closer. Do not get discouraged at your moments that you have in your life where it seems like you're in the furnace or the lion's den. You see those lions circling around ready to pounce. And you think, this is it for me. I don't know what I can do to get out of this situation. You don't need to. If God is telling you, hey, this is your way out, this is the way I want you to go, you go that way. If God is saying, sit tight just a little bit longer, just sit tight a little bit longer. Now, I don't need to keep beating this drum. I don't need to come up with different ways to say the same thing over and over again. Just know that the more you keep your eyes on him, the more you build that relationship, the better things are going to get. I'm not saying you're going to not struggle. Because believe me, you will still struggle. There will still be financial issues. There will still be housing issues. There will still be bad neighbors next door with the dog that likes to get off and try to kill you. Not experience, I promise. There's still going to be all those things. But things are going to be a little bit different. Like maybe that neighbor doesn't let his dog outside anymore. The more you pray for it, the more you work towards it, the more you talk to God about it, the more he's going to take your situation into his arms. He wants to take you and embrace you and hug you, just like you would your own kids. So I'm going to have you all bow your heads this morning.
Are you enjoying Journey Life Church's videos? Consider donating today via the Givelify app on the Google Play and Apple App Store.